Hello, this is Gill Fielding, and this is what's caught my eye in the media this week. Now, I like knotweed, Japanese knotweed. I think it's persistent and it's got a purpose, so there's some pluses to it, but of course it can cause huge damage to the foundations of a property or property in general, and certainly pathways. And there's now an organisation called EnvironNet UK, who are now counting the number of knotweed outbreaks per area. And it turns out that Bolton in Manchester is now the knotweed capital of the UK, and they've found 684 infestations within a 4-kilometre radius of Bolton since 2019. Second place is Bristol with 475 outbreaks, and St Helens in Merseyside is third with 441. Now, I reckon now that somebody started to count knotweed cases, that it's not going to be very long before there'll be some government initiative to include knotweed outbreaks on sales particulars for properties. So look out for that one. And in the meantime, if you don't want to embrace knotweed, then avoid Bolton in Manchester. But of course, knotweed can be cleared at a cost, of course, and then you get a knotweed-free certificate, which can be a real USP when selling a property. So consider knotweed. I reckon it's going to be on sales particulars in the next few years. Now, I read this week about a garage being sold or up for sale for £80,000 in Cornwall, and apparently in St Ives in Cornwall, a garage was sold for £100,000 a short while ago. Now, this seems bonkers to me, just to pay that huge amount of money just for storing a car. Now, a car costs on average between, say, 15 and 25,000 and lasts about 13 plus years. So if we took £20,000 as an average purchase price of a car and multiplied it by 13 years, it works out that a garage only makes its money, you only get your money back after about somewhere between 55 and 70 years. And that seems a ridiculous thing to do and to pay for storage of a vehicle. I mean, you wouldn't pay 5 times the amount for a bag than you would the shopping that was in it. It's a ludicrous thing to do. And nowadays, cars are built to sustain the weather, extreme weather conditions, heat, cold and snow and so on. So I'm wondering whether actually paying £100,000 for a garage is very sensible as an investment. Of course, if you want somewhere nice to store your car and whatever, and you've got plans for the garage, well, that's a different matter. But if you look at it in a simple return for your money deal, it's not a very good one. Now, it's now May, and obviously a month ago was the end of the last tax year and the start of the new one. The new one started on the 6th of April 2022. And I was absolutely staggered to read that 66,500 people filed their tax return for last year on the 6th of April, so the first day of the next tax year. Now, they're very keen, or maybe they're just trying to avoid penalties, because I've also read that the HMRC has now increased their penalty interest rate to 3.5%. So if you're late paying tax, they'll charge you 3.5% on it as penalty interest. However, if they're late paying back to you an overpayment, they only pay you 0.5%. So it's 3.5% if you're late, 0.5% if they're late. Now, that doesn't seem fair to me or logical, but a government spokesperson said the reason that it was set at 0.5% is that they didn't want to encourage people overpaying their tax and then getting a higher interest rate on that money than they could get in the high street on their savings. Now, I don't think anybody would be bonkers enough to overpay their tax just as a savings opportunity, just in case they never got it back. It's not like a bank deposit. So I think the logic is a bit flawed there, but I do understand the rationale of it. And I now do understand why 66,500 people filed their tax return bang on the first day of the year. They don't want to be paying 3.5% on their interest. So well done then. Now, the government has a way of interfering when they think it's a positive thing, but it turns out to be a negative thing. And they interfered on overdraft costs. And apparently now the average interest rate on an overdraft is a staggering 34.07%, which is over 60% more than before the pandemic. Now, the reason that arose was that in the bad old days, or the good old days, an authorised bank overdraft, so if your bank had said yes you can go overdrawn, was much cheaper than an unauthorised bank overdraft. So if you went overdrawn by accident or without prior agreement, then the charges for that were much higher than if you had approved the overdraft with your bank in advance. Now, the government were trying to stop these huge unauthorised interest rates, so said to the banks, you must charge the same overdraft rate for unauthorised overdrafts as you do for authorised ones. So what did the banks do? They just put up the authorised overdraft rate up to the level of the unauthorised rates. And so now everyone pays a lot more, and the average overdraft rate is over 34%. Another example of a government just not thinking through what would happen in reality and in practice. And I know their hearts may be in the right place, but when is somebody going to do some joined up thinking at the government to work out the impact of their policies? So I think that's absolutely bizarre. And another example of the government not really understanding how the world works in reality. And of course, I can't leave this week without talking about inflation. That went up to 9% this week. So we've now got 9% inflation, and it's likely to go higher. We've got rising costs, particularly on the energy area, and that's going to go up again in October for sure. We've got a 1% base rate. And so all of these financial statistics are looking to be unfavourable at the moment. And I just want to say they're not really unfavourable, they just are. And as a successful professional investor of any kind, or wealth creator of any kind, you have to learn to cope with fluctuating situations. And my guidance to everybody is you take control of your money and work out how to work around some of these issues. Don't leave it up to the government, because they only get it wrong, and they can't look after everybody. They're trying to find a one-size-fits-all policy, which of course they can't. And as we've seen with the bank overdraft interest, they don't really understand how things work in reality. So final message, take control, take responsibility. If it's to be, it's up to me. Well, I hope you have a good and a safe week, and I'll see you next time.